Well, hey everyone, welcome back to another exciting interview with David Noble Whitecrow. We've got the system hooked up here. We're using Zoom today, and this is a recorded interview, obviously, but we're not holding up the phone to the microphone. Dave's got his studio working. We got the sound, we got the audio, the video. So we thought we'd just do a show for you right now. David and I were talking about a lot of interesting stuff yesterday, and we said let's record it and put it on YouTube. So Dave, welcome back to the show.
Yeah, thank you, doctor. It's awesome. So much is going on. I mean, it's just like a fantastic alert out there in the cyber world and here on Earth and everywhere else pertaining to this UFO disclosure coming up. I mean, major fake news is coming out with it, all the major networks are coming out with it, and people are hosting shows are talking about it. Yeah, so let's move right along. I want to jump right into that topic that you revealed. Something unusual happened. You want to tell the audience what you discovered, and then I'll tell you how it happened with the RV.
So here's what happened. We did an RV class last April, and I invited David to come on to the weekend class, the online Zoom class. And he gave us a really interesting story, which you all haven't heard. It had to do with him actually doing a type of psychokinesis, astral travel from his perception, where he went to visit a woman's house, a woman that he was involved with, and just send her a little message that he was around and he moved something. And he said to her the next day, "Can you go check?" And she said, "Hey, this thing moved, this book, where I can't find it." And Dave said, "Well, maybe you should check behind the couch." He had moved it there overnight. If I'm right, Dave?
Yeah, you got it right on.
And she said, "Well, how did you know it was over there?" He goes, "I don't know. I just had this feeling." And this was Dave's experience. He was explaining this. Now, I got to explain, in the RV class, we don't teach people to do astral travel. It's just remote perception. But Dave was giving us an example of different ways that people can use psi. And so anyway, fast forward to today. I am at a remote location in the Northwest where I do some research from time to time, and in the inland Northwest. And I noticed something had moved the other day. It was a piece of wood that had been in the ground for 30 years, and all of a sudden it was moved a couple inches away from where it had been overnight. It was a little mysterious. It looked like someone had just picked it up and moved it. I mean, I know bear can do things like this, but nothing else was disturbed. There were no sounds. It was a mystery. So I was talking to Dave yesterday. What was your explanation for it?
Well, my explanation I asked you prior to that is, are you alone out there? I've got a feeling someone is there. You never talk much about your dad, blah, 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 blah. And then, after that conversation, I was laying in my rack one day, and I said, you know what? I'm going to go there. I've got pictures collected on my text commenting on my phone, and I know his location. I seen him strumming his guitar. I know the general location, blah, blah, blah. So I went into this meditation that I use. Now, folks, this is my method, and I don't know if it will work for you, but you have to have a passion. You have to have a passion to do it. You have to have a priority. There has to be a reason to do it. You just don't say, well, I'm going to go there, I'm going to spy and get some information, come back, tell the powers that be. No. You have to have a passion. And my passion is because I'm so connected with Dr. Simeon on many fronts that I thought it would be so cool to go there and do something and then ask him, is anything unusual going on where you're at? So I teleported, I'll just use that loosely, ESP, the old style, ESP, and I teleported there. It was dark. And when I do this, it's dark, okay? I'm not doing a fast forward film like you do see on TV or the movies, okay? Zipping there and zipping back. No. It's dark. But when I arrive, it starts to light up a little bit, and I begin to see where I'm at. I almost got distracted. If you're distracted, you'll come right back to your bedroom, wherever you're sitting on the can, wherever you think you're practicing this. And so I had to focus in this dim light. And along the way, I hit this stump, and I thought, wow, that I wasn't thinking about the symbolism of pain, but I knew I hit it hard enough to dislodge it somewhat, not much, but enough. And I said, well, was that it? Was the powers that be said, go ahead and go back home? So that's what I did. And so I asked him when I talked to him, I says, anything going on? I never heard you talk about your dad. Just to start a conversation. Then he comes up with exactly what you discovered. Go ahead, doctor.
Yeah, it looked really intentional. I mean, I'm telling you, this piece of wood's been in that ground for a long time, and all of a sudden, I just noticed it's something. Someone had to pick it up and pull it out, and it had to be intentional. So David is admitting that he was the one who did it. Just as a little sign to say, "Hey, I'm doing a little more astral travel, like I did the example I used in your RV class, which was really interesting. But I did it for you, just to show you that that these things are real." So.
Yeah, and I was really happy about that. That's what I asked him. I said, is something going on there? And I didn't want to come out and point at it. I wanted him to reveal it on his own, because that makes it more authentic. And it's an awesome experience on my end, and it's an awesome experience. Now, he's the only second person in my lifetime, folks, that I've done this with. I don't do it because I have this fear that I might just end up in limbo and not be able to get back to the toilet. You know what I'm talking about?
Well, so this is the thing, Dave. We don't have that fear in RV, because RV, you're not really going anywhere. It's like tuning into a TV channel. The screen shows you the info, but you're still here writing. And this is why I actually don't teach astral travel, because that sort of thing. But if someone wants to do that on their own, there's no problem.
I don't encourage it. No, I don't encourage it.
Yeah, I've heard stories of. Actually, I heard stories from my mom, believe it or not, of she was with her Buddhist teacher, Ruth Dennison, in Nepal. She heard this story from Ruth Dennison. She wasn't there in Nepal, but she heard the story from Ruth, who had been in Nepal. Ruth used to have an ashram in Joshua Tree before she passed on a couple of years ago. She was friends with Alan Watts. Anyway, the story was, she told this young fellow not to do astral travel, and he insisted on doing it. And one day they couldn't find him at dinner, and they went up to the little meditation room a little farther up the mountainside.
Yeah.
And he had passed on in a lotus position.
Yeah.
He was only in his 20s. So you're from. So I don't encourage it for that reason.
I don't either.
Everyone's free to do what they want, and I don't teach it. But it's your life, and it's exciting. Anyway, so that's, Dave, a very interesting little episode, and so thank you. I appreciate the new video setup. I'm sure everyone does. We've been having you on my phone, held up to the mic. It's worked. People have enjoyed the show.
Yeah.
But this is really great, because now we're up to speed with where technology is, which is we can see you. It sounds good. It looks good. So thanks.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm planning to have my own podcast eventually on YouTube.
Great.
I've got a learning curve, and at my age, it's very slow. Editing and all that stuff. Even if Robert was coaching me along the way, the moment he'd leave the room, I'd forget everything. That's just the way you are when you get to be my age. And of course, if you come from the same DNA group that I came from. But I've had an exciting time ever since I met Dr. Simeon, and so many wonderful topics we've covered. We've got about 11, I think, episodes, and it never ceases to amaze me, him coming up with new stuff. I mean, just disclosing new cover. Yeah.
I appreciate it, David. Now, look, let's everyone just to refresh your memory. David is a U.S. Navy veteran. He's been on the show and talked about his role among many ships, the USS Finch. There it is. There's his stripes right there. And we talked yesterday on Memorial Day. But David was part of Operation Dominic, which was this nuclear weapons testing to make sure these weapons horrendous as it sounds, they had to work before they put them in the Minuteman missiles, and this is how they tested them.
I'm going to show the folks all my certificates of
Oh, there they are.
authenticity. I'm not one of your fake.
Oh, David is the real deal. I've seen his
real
DD
deal.
214. This is our 11th episode, if I'm not mistaken. And David later, he saw a UFO from the Finch in 1962, if I'm not mistaken, which we've talked about. Go back to episode 1 if you want to. We're not going to review all of it again, but in episode 1, he told us of seeing this huge cylindrical object come over the starboard side of the ship. There were other members of the crew on board, and the object passed out of sight, but David later synchronistically ran into the diver who was sent down to find this object, and it was huge. There were life forms on board. So we're not kidding around, folks. We're not talking about little objects swarming around a Navy ship for a couple hours. We're talking about an object that David has described as the length of 2 football fields, right?
Yep.
Is that right? Or
Yep. Oh, you're right
going
on.
by with a blue plasma flame, goes out of sight. They're told to, not to talk about it. They got the whole spiel about NDAs and everything. But David later runs into the guy.
14 years later.
20 years later.
14 years later on Gitmo.
14. On Gitmo. And so this is a great story. This is how Dave and I started talking. And then we later found out David experienced paranormal sort of experiences, which we've gone through in episodes up to today. So I encourage you to review them. What we're talking about today is, I called Dave yesterday. I said, Dave, what do you think about all these Navy unidentified objects that we're seeing? The USS Omaha, we're told, had 14 objects swarming around it. The radar footage was, leaked. And we're told the way this is leaked, by the way, David, it's not an official leak. This has been circulating on email within the Navy for years. All of this stuff we're seeing now, people have seen it circulating on email with people who have the classifications, the security clearances to see it. They've been sharing it. And one of these people, or some of them, whoever it is, has been leaking it slowly to the public. And we got this radar. So what Dave and I were talking about is, are these, what we thought Dave saw in 1962 was a genuine extraterrestrial object from all the evidence. It's huge. The technology is unknown at the time. It was seen close up by someone who was sent down as the diver to check it out. Shadows were seen through the translucent walls of the object down on the seafloor. And there was a multinational effort to try to capture this thing, though it escaped. The objects we're seeing now are small. They're seen for a couple hours, and they seem to swarm these Navy ships. So what David and I were talking about, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, we were trying to decide yesterday, are these extraterrestrial objects, or are these some sort of test objects that the military, the Navy, are sending against its own ships to see how they react? Well, what do you think, David, based on your knowledge of this?
Well, I think it's part of the government's intention to keep the flames burning in the curiosity nature of the entire, curious individuals who want to know the truth. And I firmly believe that as co-conspirators with other countries that agree with our government, that in order to keep the lid on advanced technology, and I'm not talking about back engineering, that's another subject we can go into later on, but I'm convinced that it's Earth technology. I believe that the United States and other countries, it could be Britain, it could be France, Germany, are actually operating these vehicles. And unfortunately, their stealth technology was not as as sharp as they thought it was. And they were testing their radar system to see if they could be picked up, but they didn't realize that they were being observed from Earth just by normal individuals or some type, high-tech photography and other military. Now they use our military and other militaries, and there's only a need to know in this particular program, it's not the entire military or the Navy this is a special unit, aviation space unit, that are completely under the cloak protection of an agency above CIA, but they are connected with NSA. And unfortunately, their stealth was detected. And so they're using this information, it's my belief, using this information to improve their stealthness. Okay. So it's not extraterrestrial. They didn't back engineer anything to get this ability. It's far advanced secret, top secret, ultra secret technology. And they're looking at the bright side of it while we were seeing. So we got to go back to the lab. We've got to go back and improve. So it was not intended for anybody to see it. It wasn't intended for, the military to pick it up and to be recorded. So all these officials, unofficial commentaries, people that have worked for Pentagon, worked for the CIA, worked for secret UFO research centers and everything, they are all been primed by the powers to be to come out and start, feeding the general public a byline, if you will, a front line, which is not real. That's my belief.
Right.
That's what I firmly believe. If you want to expound on that and give it a little bit more flavor and, to be accepted, to go ahead. But that's how I see it.
No, I mean, David, so this is your opinion. This isn't based on anyone you've talked to. This is, because there's a lot of discussion within folks that study this and on YouTube and podcasts. I mean, and there's arguments on both sides. A lot of people, including former Navy vets like you, have come forward and said they think that this is some branch of the military testing its own hardware against the top Navy ships with the best equipment to see what they look like on radar, to see what the response is, and look at the data later and get a sense of how stealthy is it. Just like you're saying, you're not the only one who said that. Others have said this, that they think that this is what is going on. Now, there hasn't been any evidence presented of which program would be doing this, but it seems plausible to me, and I'm leaning in that direction too, because in my experience, limited experience, David, just taking an example of what you saw in 1962, to me, that is the genuine, either extraterrestrial or parallel reality sort of craft. From our own. It's too big, it's too strange. There's witnesses in the case of this Navy diver who unfortunately had an accident, passed away just shortly before he was able to write his book he was going to write a book about going down and diving and seeing this huge thing like out of the abyss, the movie The Abyss. Yeah. And this seems to me what we're seeing, these swarms, more like drones.
Well, I want to bring up something that just want to do a little back check in here. Back in the 60s, with George Adamowski, I don't know if many people know about George Adamowski, but he was invited by the CIA back then because he had photographs of cylindrical objects. So if you look up you could probably get it on PDF.
George Adamski?
Adamski, excuse me, I caught him Adamowski. Yeah, Adamski. Okay. And he actually had photographs of the cigar-shaped, UFOs. And he went there, and I don't know exactly the dialogue or what he gave the CIA information or anything, but it's in line. It's in line. If that was the 60s, it's in line with what actually occurred in Operation Dominic with one of these cylindrical 2 football field in length objects that was just gliding over the sea about 14 degrees off the sea level and down in, going down. And I was like the channel we discussed the very first time. I was ordered on my way to my general quarters station to man the starboard rail of the Finch, among other individuals. And I've got to tell you this, that I want to include this before we move on to something that will give the audience a more detailed effect. I never revealed what happened to the other dozen or so individuals that participated So I want to reveal that now. I kept it a secret.
Yeah, I've always wondered.
I kept it a secret because I think
you didn't talk. Yeah.
powers that be, after all the years, what is it, 56 years or 65? I forget. You do the math. One of them I know was very close. He committed suicide. Another one who was kind of a jokester in our division, first division, the Decade division down there. He was murdered. Okay. Another one ended up in the loony bin, and I don't know how long he was there for therapy or whatever. Another gentleman. And this is while we were on the Finch. I knew of two of the participants that witnessed the same UFO that I did. Their character, personality changed. They even, and I'm going to say this now, the Navy didn't know back then, but they went ashore and bought weapons. So they bought pistols. One of them showed me the pistol back there, but it was off the beach when he purchased it. It was a 22 caliber single shot. He says, I'm keeping this on me. I've been having these bad dreams. He says, but they're so real. And I'm scared to death, but I don't want to tell my division officer about it because I've got a family and I don't want to lose the benefits and all this other stuff. So these are things I didn't reveal pertaining to the other individuals that had witnessed the same UFO. I went through my series, and your episodes revealed everything that occurred to me from Men in Black, Men in White, and all the other interesting paranormal events that has happened in my life since then. But of course, I was a candidate from the time I was born. So if they go back far enough to episode 1, they can learn how I was almost abducted by an ET. But it's amazing how similar military individuals. There was a chief back in one of your episode channels who was completely overhauled when he had witnessed what he did. He became an artist. He was interested in gold, and I told you about Montezuma's treasure and all this other stuff. So there are parallels here that happen to people when they come that close. And I'm talking about, what closeness is? I'm talking within 600 or 700 feet of seeing a UFO, where your life completely changes. Okay. And you either go through divorces like I did, or you go to a complete menopause, if you want to look at it that way. And it's just phenomenal. It's just phenomenal. Your whole life is flipped over. And so I just want
I appreciate you saying this, David. You've never talked about what happened to the other people, and this is my major concern: is without adequate discussion and therapy and debriefing of what military folks are experiencing. I'm sure in the Air Force too, we've had other people on the show who experienced it as missile security guards. There's no adequate way to conceptualize that experience in the framework of reality that we've been raised. So what you don't know what to do with it. And I'm afraid, and you're mentioning these cases where people couldn't handle it psychologically. Because
if I had been analyzed back then, it's just by circumstance. When I say by circumstance, I'm saying that you can call it my guardian angels, ET. They were looking after me, and because I still have a purpose, for them. And as long as I'm on the shelf and they can take me down to encourage a particular thing of their interest, then that's what happens to me. But it's been a whirlwind for me and my family's. My life has been topsy-turvy. It's only because my love child, Robert, has stabilized me. And leaving Southern California to move up here, where Bigfoot country is, Humboldt County. I've really kind of leveled off, and I'm calmer. I'm sensible, and I'm loving it. I'm living my life as an artist. All kinds of things are going on, and I'm just grateful that I have a chance to see a brilliant-minded individual like my son achieve the things he's done on this shutdown, this COVID-19 shutdown. He's learned how to speak German fluently. He's learned how to play 3 guitars, electric, acoustical, and a little ukulele. Yeah. He's learning Chinese on his own to write it as well as speak Chinese. And I'm not exaggerating, folks. If he wasn't so shy, I'd have him come over here and say something.
I'm impressed.
But he's online.
correct.
He's online around the world. He's got friends in Australia,
Wow,
Germany,
congratulations.
Europe, Belgium. I mean, he's up to 2 or 3 in the morning. I have to jump on his ass. Excuse my French. To go to sleep. He's got a class the next day.
David,
Yeah.
is that some of your artwork that we see behind you on the right side?
Yeah, it is. Here's one I'm working on. People who smoke a little, something. I'm doing a gnome with a bong. I don't know.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hold it farther, a little farther back from the camera.
I don't know. If
No, it's the focus. Oh, we can see it better if there. Yes.
Yeah.
I see.
He's
For
smoking.
those of us, it
Yeah.
states
Up here,
that
you gotta paint with cells. So I'm doing these little emerald green.
Now, for
painting.
those of you who just joining us for this first video, David, we've shown some of David's artwork and discussed it in other videos. Even
Keep
in
talking. I'll come back with them. Keep talking.
some really strange experiences he's had around these paintings. Even one of these men in white that he referred to, who came up to him and told him not to talk about what we're talking about here. It was at one of his art exhibitions in, is it San Diego?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here's one kind of like a
Oh, beautiful,
Van,
beautiful,
a
David.
Van Gogh.
Yeah, that's really nice.
And
David, what's your website
here's
for
a-
people
here's a-
to look at
here's a
this
little-
online?
Here's a little Rembrandt painting. Chicken
This is, what was your website again, David?
MemorySealace.com.
MemorySealace.com.
Yeah,
Memory
Sea
Sea
Lace.
Lace.
Memory Sea Lace. When I was in San Diego, I was so in love with the surf over there. Excuse me. The foam that comes up to the surf.
Mhm.
It reminded me of lace, like a lady's lace. And so,
Yes.
you know what? I'm going to call this MemorySealace.com because
Good.
I made a
Yeah.
poem. I also wrote a poem, and one of these days I'll say the poem on, live. It's the only poem I ever wrote.
It's fantastic, dude.
Yeah.
Again, I want to reemphasize, we've mentioned other casualties of the UFO phenomenon, lack of disclosure in other episodes. And I just want to emphasize again,
Oh, listen.
one of the reasons,
Well, let me tell you, if you want to I'll do it as fast as I can about the guy that was a sonar man. Remember?
please do.
On the ship coming back, and they couldn't open up the hatch to the sonar room, so they had to get the ship's welders when they were in dock aboard the destroyer tender repair ships, and they had to cut the hatch open. Excuse me. And they discovered that he had hung himself on the doggings on the inside of the sonar room, and he was already liquefied down to his feet. And it just exploded when they finally got topside. And the photographer, who I knew was a very good friend of mine, showed me the pictures. And I couldn't believe what I was looking at. And they don't know how he did it, how he could possibly have tied himself. It was like somebody else from the inside would have had to do it, but there was no other exit for the person who did it to exit. And so it was amazing. It was one of the horrific crimes that was committed.
But this sonar operator had the tape, as if you were telling me correctly.
Absolutely, he had a
long
well.
period
That's
sonar.
I learned that. Yeah, I learned that
Of
I learned that.
USOs, we're talking about unidentified submerged objects.
Yeah.
And
They were missing.
The ship
When they
had
went,
been
that was the purpose of going down there. They thought he went on liberty, and he forgot to return those tapes to the powers that be. So they wanted to go down and get them before they ended up in the wrong hands.
You said that the Navy was so keen to get these tapes that the ship was escorted back to Seattle, was it? Or Bremerton?
Bremerton, Washington.
Bremerton, yeah. And so again, if this type of story reminds us how serious this is, that we get this out in the open so that we don't have these human casualties anymore of the secrecy. Whether we don't know whether this person took their own life or whether it was made to look that way. But I have heard so many cases like this, and David's mentioning others here, when he saw his, extraterrestrial object, for lack of a better word, that there's casualties of not talking about it. there's too much secrecy. It has a real negative consequence. That's what we have to. One of the reasons we need disclosure is not just to meet the ETs. It's for our own society to start having a conversation about it, which is a lot healthier than people holding it in and then subjecting themselves to violence or whatever because we didn't have the proper means for them to talk about what they experienced.
Yeah, it's true. And now everything is going to unfold, but I'm of the opinion all it's going to do is create more questions. There's going to be more questions that's going to be answered.
The report is due next month to the Senate Intelligence Committee. We'll just have to wait and see, David. I'm hopeful there'll be something positive in there that at least they could, the DNI issues this report from the Pentagon. They could say there are objects, as I mentioned in a video, a couple of videos ago, they could say, look, there are things they're seeing we can't explain. That would be a start.
Yeah. And if you want to look at it as entertainment, a feature on the channels that we have had in the past, I know the truth end of the ET. That doesn't necessarily mean that everybody has to accept what I know personally or what I believe personally, that they exist and how much they influence our government, they influence our science, our technology, et cetera. I can go on and on, but just listen to Dr. Simeon's, past episodes right up to episode 10, I think, where I reveal what Bigfoot is all about, where I reveal what the ET is all about, and the journey I've had and the impact and influences I've had, and you decide for yourself. And I just know this. There's two things that will destroy friendship. That's politics and religion. And I don't want to lose any friendship out there. But I do want to share the knowledge that I have in my journey about the ETs. And if you wish to know about that, then, go back and listen to Dr. Simeon's episodes.
But basically, David, your experience in the Navy confirms the existence of these extraterrestrials. You are witness to special teams coming aboard your ships, installing, if I'm not mistaken, special radar systems that were designed to
EMF radar weapon system.
Are you 100% certain?
Yeah, I am. On a tight ship like the Finch back then, you were friends with everybody. People say, well, how do you know that? Listen, it was the same thing I did after I left the Finch. I went to work for Com Crew Dispatch for Admiral Dornan. My paintings got me inside to get information where the average person couldn't. When I went on Liberty, I didn't have to stand in line. I went aboard the captain's gig. When I was drunk coming back, I would come back drunk on the captain's gig. Okay, that's just the way it was with me because I was something they needed. Okay, I had something they wanted, and in exchange, they protected me. Okay, I had that, I'll use the word shroud protection from the officers all the way up to the admiral when I was Com Crew Dispatch. And so I had received information on unidentifiable bogeys and all this other stuff from officers that were in charge of the sonar, they were in charge of radar, Central Intelligence Centers, commanding officer or CIC. You go aboard it. You can go to the Nimitz CIC. You will see me in there. I'm there in the photographs. If you go to CIC aboard the Nimitz, okay, in 1997, they have a portfolio there. They have an album there, 1997. I'm in there. Hello. None of this stuff I'm making up. It's true. Okay, I'm just not revealing who the officers are. Okay, but you'll see the men, enlisted men who were part of the Central Intelligence in CIC there aboard the Nimitz. This Nimitz issue is not new. All it is now you have 20th century technology and video. Now you can see that this stuff was going on 24/7 when I was aboard her, 1997. Hello, through 99. Okay, I'm not putting these other witnesses down. I'm not. They're right on. But the Nimitz was involved with UFOs way back when I was assigned to the Intel Center there. Okay.
David, is it your belief, based on all of the discussions with the Navy brass that was aboard some of your ships, the commanders of the ship, you mentioned you had special access as you did their personal portraits and you did, drawing work for this CIC.
Yeah, the conferences, when they would have their conferences, when they'd sit in the captain's cabin, or they'd be in their conference room and discussing what was going on. And I had learned, I never disclosed this, but I had learned the conference that was going on before the sighting of the UFO and the Finch. I got this later, and I didn't want to reveal it because, I could still get in trouble for some of the stuff. But the point is, they knew, Finch was already on station, and they were assigned an order and ordered to anticipate what I witnessed. They already knew it. That was their purpose, was to record it. Okay. And the secret weapon radar EMF systems they had there, they were in unison, and they were all coordinated to work with the explosion that went off that day in the ionosphere. It was and the subsurface nuclear blast at the same time. And the Finch, excuse me, not the Nimitz, but the Finch was coordinated with other picket ships that had the same EMF weapon system, radar systems, that were all focused. Because you see, this UFO that I'm talking about, that I seen, it was on station. It was observing us. It was there, let's just assume, to report to their main command what we were doing, when the next blast was going to happen. They had access to our sonar. They had access to our radar. They had access to the minds and brains of the people that were there to monitor them. But they were just more intelligent. They knew how to monitor us better. But they didn't expect the Big Bang. They did not expect the missile coming up from the ocean floor from a submarine. They didn't expect the missiles at Jarvis Island, Johnson's Island, to be sent up in the ionosphere. They didn't expect a half a dozen picket ships with the EMF radar weapon system to hit them. Because this guy, when I call this guy, I'm talking about the UFO that I sighted. It was monitoring us. It was keeping an eye on us. And when we fired everything at once from the ocean and from the ships and from the air, we had planes in the air that had the same EMF radar systems to target this thing. Hey, where could it go? Well, it didn't blow up, but it sure screwed up something to keep it going down range about 14 degrees off the sea level. And that's what I witnessed.
And you're convinced from all of the discussions you had and your observations, this is literally an extraterrestrial craft filled with beings from another place.
Yes, it's not what we're seeing, the triangle, this and triangle. Now that's okay, folks. You want to go into science fiction? You believe whatever the heck you want. All right. But I'm telling you, those are just drones, and they belong to us, Britain, Germany, France, whoever belong. Those are just drones. Okay. And whether we were used as guinea pigs to see if we could see them, track them with our radar, then they got to go back to the drawing board and make them more stealth. That's what I believe. Okay, you believe it, they're from extraterrestrial. Extraterrestrial. If they go down, they can manage to get away on their own. If they don't, they have their own rescue salvage team that comes and picks up the pieces. I hate to pop the bubble on Roswell. But folks, listen, if one of their ships did go down, there would be no trace of it left, because their backup salvage teams, rescue teams would have come down and picked up all the scrap metal that supposedly you could bend it, you couldn't burn it, you could cut it. But why was it in pieces if that was a fact? No. That didn't happen.
Your view then is that Roswell was an intentional extraterrestrial crash?
No, it was not. It was not. People are going to dislike me for saying this, but
well, what do you think it was?
I think exactly what the military eventually said. They wanted to monitor Russian nuclear tests. Listen, if Russia had a bigger bomb than us, wouldn't you want to know what they were doing? They had a bigger bomb than us.
So Dave, that's interesting. We've never talked about this. You think that Roswell really was a mogul balloon test, like the Air Force said? You think they're telling the truth there? You do? Okay.
I believe in
We've never talked about it on the show. I mean,
you look, you know the markings they found. You know the little markings they found on the metal. So it wasn't metal.
Yeah.
They were little Christmas designs because it was a part of the bamboo they used to stretch out part of the apparatus that was they sent up. You know, it was balsa wood and all this other stuff they had collected off the floor with this semi-plastic balloon crap, and you know, they saw symbolism.
well, if it's just ordinary materials, why all the flights to Wright-Patterson to bring all the stuff over there? We know that
Because I'll tell you how smart the Pentagon was at the time. What better way to cover up what the military was really doing if we just had to create a story that remember the story when what was his name, that actor that said the Martians were coming or had landed?
Orson Welles.
Yeah, they learned from that. And they learn from the farmers and the people that smoke too much grass, you know, on the reservations, and they see this, they see that. And I'm sorry, I'm not putting down my own kind, but I'm just saying, you know, you see Venus, you see swamp gas, you see this or that. You know, that's what they're going to tell you. And you're going to say, no, it
David,
isn't.
It's an interesting perspective. We've never talked about it before. I'm really interested.
I know. I'm on a run. I'm on a run. But I'm going to tell you this. Listen. ETs are here. They are here in the hundreds, if not thousands right now, but they are just a time away from us being aware of their presence. Okay? They're teachers, they're observers, they're learners, they're discoverers. They're not here to invade us. They're not here to transplant us. Okay? Now you do, and we'll go into that later, the other ones. There's on both sides, there's a good and they're bad. Okay? And we know the story of the bad one that has been tracking me, and now they're trying to catch him and all this other crap. But that's another story.
Dave, I want to get into something that you said yesterday, which we agreed to talk about. It's a story you've never mentioned before. You said that you were docked at Pearl Harbor, and you encountered a military guy in different uniform, and you asked him, "Hey." Yeah. Why are you wearing a dark uniform like that? Can I get one of those too? Is that what you said to him?
Yeah.
What's the deal with that?
Because he had a rank on it. He had a rank like this. Okay, what I'm showing you here. He had a first class sergeant rank on him.
What was he doing? What did he tell you?
I'll get to the point. What he was doing, he was part of a Navy secret team of security breach. I can't get it right straight, so forgive me, folks, but he was part of a security breaching team that would go aboard submarines and aircraft, Navy aircraft, or whoever they were assigned to, ships, tender ships, destroyers, cruisers. Didn't make any difference what it was, and they would either frogman or they would sneak aboard. They would literally capture. And unknown to the people they captured, the skipper, meaning the captain, the executive officer, they could be underway. In other words, they would sneak aboard, hide in the bilges, hide somewhere, and when the ship was out doing sea trials, they would take over the ship. That's what they would do. Or they'd take over a Navy plane, or they would do it to test the security, acquisition of the military hardware. They could break into coding, they could break in the medical centers. They could pretend they were a patient. They'd be, gurneyed into an operating room, and they would pull out their guns loaded with blanks, and they would just hold everybody hostage. And then they would see how the MPs and how the civilian security forces on base or in the shipyards or wherever, if they could come up with a solution of how to save the people who were, kidnapped or held for ransom. That was their job.
They were playing the role of the enemy to test the defenses of these different military units, the ships, the planes. I believe in modern language, it's called the red cell unit. They pretend to be, based on blue and red. They were the red team. And they were seen.
Oh, they were beyond that. Yeah, they were beyond that.
Way beyond that.
I know what you mean, but they were beyond that. These guys, they didn't screw around. They didn't screw around. They had fake ID cards. They could come aboard the quarter deck and be passed on. Like you think the guy at the quarter deck, the officer, and the guy who checks your ID company, you think he knows who in the hell you are aboard a carrier? You got 3,000 people. Give me a break. They would take over the munitions. They would take over the nuclear generators. They take over and then they would hold the ship hostage. And the captain, who is he going to call? He'd have to go to his manual and say, well, what level of intrusion is this? Hello? And then he, depending on, would say, okay, now let them go. You did your job. Then they'd chew the captain or the exec's ass, excuse the French, because they weren't doing their job in security or teaching the officers or the top end enlisted men, the master chiefs and senior chiefs, of how to, teach the lower ranks to be aware of this possibility.
Yeah, right. I'm referring to a red cell because I'm aware that there were a Navy SEAL team that did the same thing with different military units to go do this to the Army, to Navy. They would play the bad guys and test the defenses of all these facilities. And they really ticked a lot of these guys off, right? Because they were good, and they would find ways to infiltrate, incapacitate, and neutralize these different, military units, facilities.
Well, it was a step up with that. They had another program which was very, very top secret. It was mentioned to me once, and when I brought the subject up again, they told me not to ask questions. But I found out through the grapevine what they were trying to avoid telling me is that some of the officers, like aboard the Nimitz or larger ships, I don't know if it was the Kuntz, because that was a pre-commissioned school, brand new missile cruiser. I don't know if it was there. But aboard the Nimitz, some of the top officers, weapons officers, or even supply officers that ran different parts of the carrier were enlisted to become part of this program, okay? And they would turn on their own people. They would turn on their own officers. They would create deliberate chaos among the ranks and enlisted men, so that mutiny could almost be instituted at any given point.
So these tests, this sort of secret inner group was doing their job to test the defenses of the Navy in many circumstances. And what you're saying is they would create an adversarial situation just to see how good they were, how bad they were. So it's not unheard of the Navy to send forces against themselves to test their readiness.
And I never revealed that before because it's going to break the silence. So people out there, they're going to have to go back and rewrite the books on this because I just revealed it. Okay, because it's been going now.
Are you allowed to say this, or do I need to delete this from the video? You're gonna
I'm not allowed, but I am.
But you're gonna say it.
They could have killed me. What did they do with all those Cambodians and their gold back in?
Yeah. You told us that story at great risk to your about the. You're referring to when you observed the military stealing things from Cambodian refugees way back
on Grandy Island in the Subic Bay when I was a military police.
And when you're military police,
you're smiling because you think they're going to come. They could. So this could be my last conversation. But you know what? I don't.
We hope not, David. But anyway, so what we're establishing here, David, is the Navy has extreme measures to test themselves so that they do their best job, and it could include sending drones and things against their own ships for hours just to see how they react. This is not. So this doesn't surprise you. This wouldn't surprise you.
I'm not part of the sea trials. They would have sea trials out there where they would test, let's just say the engine room, they test fire control centers, fire control radar. They would test them. And there's a manual, if you're a speed reader, you can go to it and then you can respond accordingly in the middle of a war game. But, they would introduce things which were just off the wall. They could come up to me if I'm in a passageway and say, hey, drop dead right here. Pretend you're dead. And then they would say, well, who would report it? Who would call the medics? Where would they take me to see if they could perform the job, and all this and that. No, I'm going to tell you something. I don't know if I should. They had They had a secret. I don't know if I should say this. Okay, I'm going to say it anyway. You know, I'm not going to say which ship it is. Okay, I'll do that. I won't say what ship it was. But they had a damage control space. Okay, damage control is like if the ship gets hit, you know, gets broadsided, or you have terrorists, you know, and up there in Syria or off the Mediterranean that comes up to you and blows a hole in the side of your ship. Some of the ships have, if they're large enough, have a damage control tank, and they will unknowingly take a few damage control. When you become damage control personnel, I don't give a shit. I don't care what your rank is. If you're a GQ and the ship gets struck or hit by, you know, a missile or whatever, you've got to go to that site and try to patch the hole and take the dead or the wounded to wherever they need to go. But some ships have a secret chamber where they will order enlisted personnel and officers to man that station, and then they'll flood it. They'll flood it deliberately, lock them in. They will lock them in there, and the water will rise up to a point where you think you're going to die and drown before they rescue you, because they have cameras. They want to know if you know how to shore it, how to prevent the water from coming in. And
wow, this is part of
yeah.
Oh, you're saying that this counter testing, this counter offensive simulation goes as far as locking people in the safe room?
Well, yeah, because, you know, if you have a program, you tell people, you know, this is what we're going to do to you. We want to see how you. What the hell? That's not going to help. You know exactly what to do. You know exactly what to do.
And they turn the water on, and it gets this up to your
And I'll tell you why I know about that, because I was in one of them. Okay, I was caught up in. Yeah, I was caught up in one of them.
You were one of the subjects of the simulation, or
I didn't know I was gonna be.
And the water keeps going up, and all
the water keeps coming on, you know, and you're grabbing pillows and blankets trying to stop the hole from the water coming in, you know. But it's all deliberate. The hatch, and you got your last breath, and it pops open, you know, and they're pulling you out like a wet rat, you know. You discover it was all set up. Yeah.
Well, David, you revealed a lot of new stuff today. I never heard this one before, but you know, here's why this matters, folks, because a lot of people say, well, they'd never test themselves with these drones and you're giving examples where they do a lot more than drones. They put you up to the right of the edge of life or death to see how you react, right?
Well, there's a psychology to the Navy, at least the Navy. I don't know if the rest of the armed forces. There's a psychology program going on to pick the right leadership, to pick the right mental stable individuals to lead, you know, to organize. Just because you passed the written test doesn't mean you're going to make a good sailor. You know what I mean? You get that scrambled eggs on your hat. Well, you've gone through some shit. Oh, excuse my French. Yeah, you know. And thank God we have a military, we have a Navy like that, because, you know, some of the individuals can just slip through, you know, and you got thousands of individuals depend on your leadership, depend on your command and choices. So you hear now, if you go to a military website, they're cleaning house now. They're cleaning house. They're getting rid of a lot of deadwood and people who are, you know, got their priorities mixed up. So,
got it.
Yeah.
Dave, is there anything? We've gone almost been about an hour here. Anything else you want to say before we wrap up? This has been a real sort of impromptu episode. We just decided to do it yesterday. Anything else? There's a lot of interesting stuff you mentioned today. I'm not sure I agree with you on the Roswell thing. That's all right. There's different points of view on it. I appreciate your point of view, but
that's cool.
But you know, it's fascinating, and I think it's fascinating, David, and it sheds a lot of light on that. The military does test their own assets and their own hardware with other hardware to see how people react. And it wouldn't be unheard of if a lot of what we're hearing now is not actually extraterrestrial craft, but their own stuff that they're testing. Anything else you want to say, David, to folks before we wrap up?
Well, I just want to say God bless all of you, and I hope that eventually, once I get my setup, everything, I'll have my own YouTube channel going, and I'm going to continually be a part of Dr. Simeon's podcasts, and we're going to do joint things together. We're going to have some experimentations on RVing. We're going to do a lot of that stuff, and we're going to talk about the crop circles. We're going to talk more about Bigfoot. I live up here in Bigfoot country. We're going to talk, a lot about some areas that are very sensitive that people shy away from. Okay, and
But that's disclosure. That's
disclosure. Yeah. And
disclosure has an inside too, David. It's not just politics, it's us.
Yeah, I agree.
It's reality.
And I'm not taking anything away from the truth, because I always want to know the truth. And from our own perspective, it's like I told my son the other day, I've got a revelation. He says, "What is it, Dad?" I said, each person has kind of got a strand attached to them. And if you left the earth, it's like unraveling it. And that's why the bald strand gets smaller as you travel through space. And you look upon the earth that was originally a size, but it was like a ball of strand. And the strand is what makes it look smaller, the light. And as you go around Alpha Centauri and come back, the earth gets larger where you came from, but it's rewinding differently. It's not the same wind up ball you had of light that you separated yourself from originally. And it may not be as tight, it may not be as uniform. And I said, he said, that's a good opener for a book.
All right, Dave, thanks for sharing that. Thanks for everyone listening. We will hit the record. We'll see you next time.